So, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a young lady here who's going to be talking about challenging relationships. So, can we give it up for Rezna Khatun on Why I Love My Abuser? Give it up!
Hi everyone, oh God, I don't want to ruin your Saturday with this sad story. So my name is Rezna Khatun. I am British born Bangladeshi. And the reason I wrote the book is in 2016, I was in a very, very toxic, abusive, cycle, 25-year relationship which I walked out on. When I walked out on this relationship, if anybody asked me, what is domestic abuse? I would say, I don't know. And even though I was born in this country, I was educated in this country, I was involved in the local community work, I used to attend all my local police meetings, I still didn't know the meaning of domestic abuse. Until today, I don't have a specific word to describe domestic abuse. If someone said to me it's domestic violence, I would say yes, it's physical attack. But if somebody said to me, explain to me emotional, mental, psychological, religious, it's hard to explain because it's certain things that the abuser does to you, you cannot explain. It's psychological terror. Even now, when I try to explain certain things, people don't understand it. So in 2016, when I left that 25-year relationship, I was lost. I was diagnosed with complex PTSD. I wanted to burn my kitchen down. Every day I was fighting with myself not to burn my kitchen down. I had major triggers with cars, with names. I didn't understand what complex PTSD was. I told a few of my family members and they laughed at me. They said, oh, it only happens to army officers, how can you have it? My parents would question me so often, oh, you must have liked being in that relationship, you must have liked the violence, why did you stay for so long? I couldn't explain why I stayed for so long. So I took it to pen and paper. And I always say, God puts people in front of you for a reason. And there's no way on this earth, 10 years ago, if somebody said to me, you'll be writing a book, you'll have your voice, you'll have a platform, and you will be meeting amazing ladies who come into your life to change your life. I will ask them what drugs they're on, because there's no way I thought I would escape and I would build a life of my own. But women came into my life as angels, and I'm getting emotional. Pamela R. Haynes, she came into my life. She's an established author, TEDx speaker, and she spoke to me and she took me along on her journey to open my eyes how to write a book. And I started my journey, I started going to events, I started finding my voice, I started working on myself, and I realized just because I left a relationship, a narcissistic relationship, that wasn't the end, that was the beginning. That was the beginning of my healing journey, finding who I am, how the culture, the religion, how certain type of abuse took over me, where I lost myself, how I lost my character, my beliefs. I felt so worthless, and the abuse that I used to listen to every day, to a point I missed it in the beginning because that's all I knew for 25 years. It took me 1 year to process what has happened to me. It took me 1 year to understand that I shouldn't be missing being abused. Went into therapy. That was another hell of a journey because that taught me why I accepted such horrific abuse, and it was to do with my childhood. Our childhood makes us the person that we become as adults to put up with things that we do. Because I have so many friends, and if they treated the way I was, they would be out of that door. Why did I stay? Why did an abuser that treated me so badly, lived in my own house, and I allowed him to treat me like that in front of my own kids? So I had to understand why I would put up with such behavior. and that went into my childhood. It has been a very, very long journey, even though I've only been free of abuse for about 8 years now. I left when I was 43, and I had to process a lot of things, and I had to understand what happened to me as a child, because my mum was a narcissist. So it was very easy for me to fall for a narcissist at the age of 17. And he was 18, I spent 25 years with him. And it was from everything, from physical to emotional to mental to religious abuse to psychological. For the last 10 years he kept me in the house like a prisoner. I was driven in the car everywhere. I was not allowed to smile. I was not allowed to speak to anybody. I was isolated from the community. My parents lived 10 minutes away from me. I wasn't allowed to see them. I saw my dad one day on the bus. I was shocked I didn't recognize who my dad was. You know, but the reason I wrote this book is because I wanted people to understand how does domestic abuse work. It is terrorizing. It is really, really bad how the abuser controls us with fear. And fear is the most powerful weapon an abuser has over us. Somebody could have put a gun to my head and I wouldn't be scared as much as when I saw my abuser. So there's hope, there's lots and lots of work going, there's lots of work women are doing absolutely everywhere. Even I went to a event last week and there were 6 speakers and I've got to say 5 of them were men. So there is a lot of work going on. It's just that we just need to talk about it more. We need to talk about it more. I feel empowered. I don't feel ashamed to say, you know, when I was 14, I was raped. And I think young children need to listen to this as well to understand what is an abusive relationship. I don't feel ashamed to say this happened to me, that happened to me, because at the end of the day, there is thousands of people, same thing has happened to them, but because of culture and religion, it oppresses them for them not to speak about it and bring shame to them. And especially in the Muslim community, it is a subject they don't want to admit. They don't even want to admit their men behave like this, because their men are religious and their men are good. And from my community, the women I get to speak all the time, I'm very, very blessed that they open up to me. Out of 100, 90% women are in an abusive relationship. So it is a very, very big percentage, and I'm sorry to say a lot of people take this offensive, but I'm talking from knowledge and facts. Religion plays a very big part of us Muslim women getting abused by our partners. So that's all. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Carl, for inviting me. If anybody wants to ask me anything I didn't cover, you know, I don't write anything down because I speak from my heart. So if I haven't covered anything, please say what made you find no, something. My faith in praying and angels. I completely believe in them, and I used to meditate and pray every day in the toilet because he saw me to get upset. But the day I left him, which was quite shocking, is when he attacked me in front of my daughter, and she was 11. And she grabbed her dad and she said, "Daddy, don't hurt my mom." And when she said that, I felt naked, I felt disgusted, I felt humiliated. And I thought, my daughter's watching this. And shockingly, he was sitting down, I grabbed my bag and I walked out in front of him. I felt like a force has come inside my body. Something happened to me. I still today I can't explain it. And I grabbed my bag and I walked out of my own house in front of him. And he looked at me, he was in shock. He was like, there's no way she's walking out. And I walked in front of him, I went to the nearest bus stop, knocked on my dad's door. And I haven't seen my dad for 10 years, and he knew something's happened. And my dad just took me in the house and he called the police on me. Thank you, God. Thanks to God. It did affect my son at the age of 17. He nearly had a breakdown. His legs went paralyzed. But at the moment, they're doing amazing. I did work on them for a long time, for 6 years. I did a lot of healing on myself. spoke to them, I did a lot of healing on them. It starts from me, the kids, my home. I had to spend a lot of time at home where I didn't get involved in other people, in any relationships. I kept talking about healing. I got involved in my family, went back to my family. My sister's absolutely amazing. And I speak to my children openly. I say, guys, this is what you've been through. If you need therapy, when you're ready, let me know. I have this person, that person can help. And because I talk about healing a lot with my family members as well, I put people in contact with therapists, and they see all this and they hear it. But I'm also very sensitive about it because it's their father I'm talking about. You know, and like sometimes I explain to them, you know, your dad, he loves you guys, but it's me that he had the problem with, because honestly, he has never hurt the kids. He's never done anything to the kids. He's actually been an amazing dad to the kids, but it's me that he had the issue with. So I explained things to them where I don't want to use them as a weapon to go against their father, because no matter what happens in God's eyes, that's always going to be their dad. And they need to understand that narcissistic personality disorder, what is it about? Because my daughter's 20, my son's 26. I don't want my son to be an abuser, and I don't want my daughter to be abused. So I rather that they have the understanding what is domestic abuse, what is narcissistic abuse, and what is right and wrong, so they don't go into society and hurt somebody else.
You said your mom was a narcissist.
She was.
And so, you're saying you don't want the children to...
Yeah.
So it's, you know, how common to
I appreciate that. Yeah.
attraction.
So my mum, she was violent. She used to beat the crap out of me every day. She would tell me every day how ugly I was, how no Asian man would ever marry me. I wasn't light-skinned enough. She, when relatives used to come to our house, she would hide me in the house and not show me. She would show my sisters. That made me hate myself. I didn't hate my mum then. And when I grew up, the difference was he never abused the kids, my ex. He was always very loving, very supportive of the children. He never hurt them. But it's an issue he had with me. So I've always told my kids, if you are not scared of your dad, because when I left, my son was 17 and my daughter was 12, I explained to them, if you are not scared of him, you can have contact with him, but I will never stop you, because at the end of the day, children always figure out everything. And I gave them that choice. Although they don't have a very open relationship, they have a text relationship. That's a decision they've made for themselves. I would not weaponize them against their father, because I have to accept that I married this man and I had 2 kids with him, and he will always be the dad. But there was no violence involved with the children. That's why. Where my mom was violent. Yeah.
Okay, any more questions at all?
I know you said that it's from childhood why you think that you went into that
Yes.
relationship in the first place. Do you think it had a lot to do with how your mum was with you?
100%. I get to speak to a lot of people who are victims, and sometimes I say to them, what was your childhood like? And they'll be like, no, my child was perfect. But when they go in therapy, when you start discovering things, something always stems from their childhood, because you would not, if I walked into the world now and somebody said to me, oh, you so-and-so, I would say, excuse me, why are you talking to me like that? Well, I would call the police. Why do we stay in our house and we allow somebody to treat us like that? As a victim, I'm saying that. Because we trauma bond. So something happens in our childhood, or we come from a broken home, we get neglected, we get rejected, we don't get the love from our parents, and we search that in a partner. And that's how we end up loving our abusers. Because even like as a child, if we get sexually abused by an uncle, we'll be sitting with him the next morning having breakfast. You know, so something always stems from our childhood. It makes us the person that we become. And we start trauma bonding with people to search for something that was missing in our childhood, and we replace it in our adulthood from a partner. So until we self-love ourselves, like I learned to love. When I left him, a friend of mine said to me, Rezna, you need to learn to love yourself. I was like, no, I love myself. What do you mean? What's there for me to love myself? It's only when I went into the healing process, I realized I actually hated myself. I couldn't even look in the mirror to look at my own face. I felt so worthless and disgusted in myself. I didn't love myself. I didn't feel I was worth anything because my mum always told me I was worth nothing. So as psychologically, I believed that I'm not worth anything. Oh, it's good this man is taking me, but to be honest, I don't need a man. I don't need a man to validate me, you know. So, but until I discovered that, I was just a small child in an adult body, still searching for love from my mum and dad that I never had. And I thought this man was good. I kept looking for validation from him. And I was like, today's going to be a good day. He's going to say something nice to me and I'm going to go up, you know, in my positive energy. And I was just looking for that high. So I always say narcissistic abuse is an addiction. We get addicted to the up and down and high and low and trying to get that validation, and the validation never comes, but we keep looking for that high validation. So most things do stem from childhood. I truly believe that.
And what was the turning point? What was the catalyst that made you decide, I've had enough, this is it?
So my kids used to do professional karate. I went to Deptford to a karate club. From all the way from East London, that's how God guided me to go to Deptford Division. And I joined this karate club, and I say the story in my book. And there was a lady called Erica who is Sensei's wife, and she used to see how I used to go in there like crawling in, like all scared, and quickly go and sit in the car. And she said to me one day, come and sit on the table, and I said, I can't. And she said, why? I said, because I have to go and sit in the car. She said, why do you have to sit in the car? I said, because he's going to get angry with me if I don't go and sit in the car. Because what abusers don't want is you communicating with people to get knowledge. They want to keep you isolated so you don't learn anything. And then the next day she said, come and sit on this chair. And I said, I can't, Erica, he's going to get angry with me. She goes, sit down, Rezna. And I sat down. And I was all curled up like this, scared, because I was always in fear. And she said, do you know relationship is not like what you think it is? And I said, what do you mean? She said, no, see all these women here. None of them are in the type of relationship that you think you're in. And she said, that's not a relationship. And I thought, what's she talking about? That's not a relationship. She said, it's very, very abusive and it's controlling. He's controlling you. And I said, no. She said, you don't need to say anything to me. I went home. I wasn't allowed to use the internet that time. So I went on my daughter's iPad and I put controlling relationship, and the light bulb just came into my head. And from then on, I used to sneak and go up to the toilet, and I used to sit there and just search for information. And that's when I thought, oh my God, what is this? And I used to delete everything I said because he used to search what I'm searching. And it took me 5 years after that to build the courage to understand what is narcissistic abuse. You've got to remember, I was in such a controlling situation. I had no escape. And that's when the light bulb came on, and that's when I realized what situation I was in. And every day I was planning how I'm going to leave, what I'm going to do, because it was my house. I had to think about the kids. I had to think, what am I going to do? I was isolated. I was alienated. I didn't know anything. All I knew is how to get in the car and come back in the house. And that was it. So that was my wake-up call.
So I was going to say, so did he used to leave you in the house while you went to work?
So this is the thing, he was extremely clever. He made his work in the garden. So I used to sometimes say to him, you know, because you know, it starts slowly. They do slowly, really, bit by bit, and then it goes and it just gets worse. And next thing you know, there's no escape. So he used to work from the house, from the garden. So, and sometimes I used to say, oh, why don't you go and get a job outside. He used to say, why? You just want me out of the house, you just want to spend time, you want to go and run around with your sisters so they can talk shit about me. You just don't want me in the house, you want to have my men in the house, and you know, all these things. And I was like, okay. So, but I became really, really quiet over the years. I wouldn't speak, I would just listen, because he was very, very aggressive. And he would threaten me all the time. Like, he would spit on my face, he would grab me. There was a lot of physical abuse, and I just used to think, if I stay quiet, I don't say anything, he's going to calm down. But he didn't calm down. It was just like a vicious circle, things going around, like so many things happening. And I think the worst bit was when spiritual abuse came in. It's like I went with the dictionary of every single abuse, but the spiritual abuse, when that came in, that was like the end. It was like, I can't take this anymore. And I thought, you know what, the only escape was just to commit suicide. And I did contemplate suicide many times, but I just couldn't go through because of my daughter.
But this act, all these acts towards you, was that behind closed doors, away from each other?
It was, yes, it was behind closed doors, but it's only later on I found out from my son when we started having open conversation that he said he was aware of it. That's why he used to go in his room and just lock the door. But it's funny we say about children. My daughter started picking it up from the age of 6. We could tell when he's angry, his skin colour used to change, and she would go and hug him or say, I'm going to massage your feet, massage your head to calm him down. So we saw the signs, and then we used to like try and make it easier for him. And you get stuck in that bubble, in that cycle. And instead of us fighting for ourselves, we're actually fighting to save the abuser. Yeah. Is that all?
Any more questions?
Oh, you've got them. I hope you took nice pictures,
In terms of your mother, do you still have a relationship with her now? Or?
I made an effort to communicate with my mum, because this is funny enough, my daughter and my mum have the most amazing relationship I can ever imagine. Now my daughter doesn't speak the language, my mum doesn't speak English, but somehow they communicate, and they have the most amazing relationship. The relationship I have with her, I didn't want to impact that on my daughter, because it's like grandmother and granddaughter relationship, and when I see that, it's very special. But I got to learn a lot about my mum as well. We've had open conversations, and she's had a lot of things that's happened to her in her past. So it's a generational abuse that goes, because she didn't know any better. But yes, I do communicate with her, I do see her, but I made a decision to make it better with her for my daughter's sake.
Was your mother violent with your father?
No, but my dad was with my mum.
Oh, your dad was violent?
Yeah, my dad was with my mum. Yeah. But they've gone really old now. And I have to say this is shocking. A lot of people say, how can you say that? They've evolved a lot. How they behave with my younger siblings, they've evolved a lot. And I always say to religious people, listen, if my parents can evolve and learn to adapt, that they can't behave a certain way, because we do live in a different country, and we do adapt to society. The world is evolving, science is evolving, society is evolving. You cannot behave the way you want to behave from your country. So my parents have evolved a lot. They understand, and even my mum wants to go and do her nails and do facials and things like that. And like, if I go to her house, I respect that I'm in her house. I would wear baggy clothes, I wouldn't wear tight clothes. Even though I'm modern, I still accept that she's a woman of religion and culture. And I don't say, oh, I can wear whatever I want. I don't do that. And I teach that to my daughter. You're going to go to your grandmother's house, she expects us to dress us a certain way, and you have to respect their boundary.
How did your siblings feel about the book?
First of all, they were okay. First they were like, oh, are you really going to write this book? And I said, yes, it was done in 2019. So as long as I don't put it in their face, which I respect them, because at the end of the day, they still are parents and they're still alive. And I don't put anything on their face. I don't expect them to follow me on social media if they don't want to. They respect what I'm doing and I respect their boundary.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yes, please. Oh,
I'm involved very highly here. Yeah, I do a lot of activist work now as well. So I'm an activist for Iran. I also do activist work for young brides in Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, where girls are getting married at the age of 9. And it's a platform that I can get involved because of the background. I am Muslim, so it's not like if somebody else comes from a different background, talk about it and they say it's Islamophobia. But I went through the same thing when I was young. I was shown as a bride at the age of 6. I knew who my husband was going to be until he went missing. So I've had the same experience, so I can relate. So I feel like I'm in a better position that I'm able to talk about and not get harassed, and because it's a very sensitive subject. I do a lot of events. I've done a lot of interviews, a lot of podcasts. But for the main reason for me is to raise awareness. I don't do too much marketing on the book. I don't know what's happening with the marketing book side. But for me, as long as I'm talking about it, raising awareness, that's what's important to me.
And for any women that are in an abusive relationship or toxic relationship, what advice would you give to them who maybe they're at the stage where they're thinking of trying to get out? How do they start? Where do they begin? Sometimes
it's really difficult to advise somebody who's in a very toxic relationship because they're not ready to leave. That person has to be ready to leave, because you can give all the advice you want. I've been there, it doesn't work. Until they're ready to leave, all you can do is support them, give them all the contacts. When they are ready, they will make that call themselves. And I always say, if you know somebody who's going through an abusive relationship, just be that one friend that they can trust, and they can rely on you, and they can tell you everything that's going on in their life, because you never know what you're going to say to them to give that wake-up call. They just need that wake-up call. Once a woman realizes and she gets a wake-up call, she's on fire. You can't stop her.
Just one more quick thing. You know this sign you got that?
Yeah.
Do you teach that for women, that when they need help, they do that?
No.
You know, you've seen that?
I've seen loads of videos, and I don't.
It's nothing that you. Because I don't know the behind it. I've like you've seen videos.
Yeah.
But I wonder where it originates from. Is it something people teach to women to, like for example, if you notice you weren't allowed out of the home much, or you were chaperone. Sometimes, from what I've seen that side, the short time maybe that they the woman's out of the house, it's a silent sign that they show people that.
Do you know what? I used to sometimes when I was sitting with him in the car, and something just used to make me so angry. He used to scream his head off and shout, and I used to be just sitting there like a little mad. And people used to go past, and I used to pray to God, will somebody see and just call the police for me, because I used to think I'm such a coward, I can't call the police. If somebody would do it for me, at least he'll get scared and he won't do it. And people used to just go past and look, oh, he's feeling his head up, and nobody would call the police. Now, if I see something like that, I know I shouldn't, I go forward. I've seen situations where I've gone over and I said, can you please leave that woman alone? And I've called the police, I've given the car number plates and said, this man is attacking a woman. But I've cried out so much in silence for somebody to call the police for that, and nobody did. Like, even my neighbours, nobody did. No, my next door neighbour was Somalian, and they used to, when he left, I did ask her, did you not ever hear anything? And she said, we did, but we just thought it was like any noise. And I said, you never ever called the police? And she said, no.
thing is, in a scenario like that, is that a lot of women then will turn against you.
Yeah.
You may have been sitting in the car praying for someone to call the police, but see, in many people's minds, if you're that bad off, then you need to call the police.
Yeah.
And you know, it is a culture in this England here that you mind your own business. Now, MYOB, as you call it, mind your own business, right? But in abusive relationships, it doesn't matter whether it's man against woman, woman against man, parent against child. Children don't tell either. You know, I've been told that you don't talk.
It's true.
Right? So when and if someone does come to your rescue, then you deny, partly because you're not aware or conscious of your situation. And in fact, until you become conscious, no one can really help you otherwise. People can hint, but you'll be like, oh, but you know, this is all right, this is but, it's always a but. So, you know, that is the dilemma, I think, for people who are in abusive relationships, for people to interfere, is that they are rejected by the very same person who is known as the victim.
Yeah. No, it's true because what happened with me, because he psychologically terrorized me so much that it's like there was a force in me that I actually couldn't pick up the phone. I actually couldn't come. I used to practice when he was not around the house. I used to go to my front door, put my feet there, and I used to say, why is it I can't leave my own house and go to my mom's house? And I used to look at it, I used to talk to myself. I was becoming self-aware. I said, there's no gun to my head. There's nobody holding me. Why is it that my feet cannot step forward to go out of this house? Why do I need his permission? Because there's certain things, how they manipulate you and how they control you, it's hard to explain. And it's easier to do that to a person that's going through trauma in their childhood. And they can sense that. When they come across you and they know you've gone through certain things, they use all that information to weaponize you. And the next thing you know, you're trapped. You don't know what your body, my body became stuck. I was like a magnet. I had all the information around me, but I just couldn't move forward. And the day by day, the years by years, suddenly just went like that. And it just was, I was trapped. I couldn't move, my body couldn't move, my nervous system couldn't move, my brain, everything couldn't move. It's only the day I left after it took me years building my life back again. I was very, very lost. I couldn't even hold a sentence together. You know, it's very, very traumatizing, especially when children see that. It traumatizes them and they take the same pattern into their adult life. And I mean, as even a parent, I have a responsibility for my children, you know, for their well-being. And I wanted to break that cycle because I didn't want them to learn this, thinking it's normal. You know, I don't want my daughter to get abused. I don't want my son to be that person. But I mean, if you guys ever did meet my children, you'd think, oh, how did they become so good? But I've worked really hard on them. I put my life on hold to work hard on them so they can understand healing. Every time I was going through something, I would talk about it in the house for them to understand what is healing. You know, especially in the Muslim community, if you talk about healing, they're like, just go to the mosque and pray, everything's going to be fine. No, it's not. I'm sorry, yeah, you can pray for God to help you, but we need to take the step forward to be better and understand and learn so we can pass that knowledge on to our kids.
So you're now an author. How did that journey begin? How did you come from being that person who was scared in an abusive relationship?
Yeah. So I was saying before, I met Pamela R. Haynes. She's an established author, a TEDx speaker. She started her journey with her first book that time, and I came across her. And I started speaking to her, and she said to me, Rezna, you should, you know, write your book. And I said, what do you mean write your book? I left school when I was 14, and I don't think I had to like put sentences together. She said, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. So when her first book launch happened, she invited me to go to a book launch. And I thought, oh, let's go, we're going to have some nice food and everything. and she introduced me to her publisher, and everything just started, like the puzzles fitted in from there. It just went boom. Next thing I know, I'm reading the book. I was like, oh my God, I've written a book, and everything just. And actually, the title I got in meditation. I was praying one day, and I was thinking, what am I doing? What is with this? Like, how is this going to happen? And I got the title, and I got the picture. And everything just, next thing I know, the book was getting released, and I was getting interviews, and it was just like, it was very overwhelming.
So, are we going to get a sneak peek of the book today? Is there any extracts? Or?
I can, it's quite a sad book, so it's been 8 years. I actually haven't picked up this book for about 4 years now. When I read it, it actually makes me cry because I feel sorry for myself that I allowed this to happen. But I think it's given me a voice to speak. I speak for a lot of women, and especially young girls. I'm very protective of young girls. Like, even if my brother or his wife have an argument, they come to me, they're like, oh, she's going to be biased, she's going to take the woman's side. And I probably will, and I'm very honest, because I think women don't get enough protection from men as it is. And that's why the women around me in my circle are absolutely amazing, beautiful, inspirational ladies. And they always uplift me. If I do something wrong, they correct me. And these are the type of women that I want to be with, you know, because we want to see the best in them, and I want to see the best in them. So I can read you a little extract. It might be sad, but sorry if it is, but it's real. Okay. Oh God, I haven't picked this book up for ages. Okay. I had no hope for ever leaving him. I was terrified, I was controlled so much. I would accept anything he said. I gave up on my life. I was depressed after being on steroids and having 2 episodes of Bell's palsy in my face. I put on so much weight, and I was told every day that I was ugly, and I was made to feel worthless. I started having thoughts of suicide. I was desperate, and I just wanted to die. One night I was so low, I prayed to God and asked for forgiveness. I planned to drop my daughter off at the school and to end my life. The next morning I walked her to school, and in the playground she turned around and said to me, Mum, when you pick me up from school, can we go to McDonald's? And that broke my heart. That's something that woke me up. I realized she needed me, and if I was gone, the narcissist would be controlling her. I needed to be strong and leave him so she didn't suffer. I came home crying, lit my candle, and just prayed to God to show me the way. Send me an angel to guide me, give me strength. I cried for so long, I just wanted to die. I asked God to end my life because I couldn't do it. I was so desperate that I was saying things that didn't make sense. The narcissist was so powerful in his control, was extremely manipulative. I believe no one would believe me. Everyone thought he was an angel, and that butter would have melted in his mouth. And I was his rubbish collector, his dumping ground. Calling me a donkey was his favourite word. So that took so long.
That's not mentioned.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's alright. Well, it's good to hear, but you know, still feel the, you know, it's very much real. But I wanted to ask as well. You were saying that when a woman is in that type of relationship, you can't really give them advice.
No.
Because they're not going to really listen, and they're not going to know until something tells them in their own time to leave. But I was just wondering, you know, like younger girls, like how do you prevent them from going into, like, you know, when they're just starting out, they're growing up and they're starting to date and things like that. How do you prevent? I mean, you probably might not know, but like, how do you?
It's
what
really
do you do
hard.
to prevent a girl from going into that type of relationship. You happen to a boy as well, but you know, for a girl, like I'm just wondering because there's so many stories of talking to girls.
It's the subject you've touched upon. We always discussed this even last week when they're trying to bring out new laws, because like faith leaders and law have a very big influence on the community. It's very hard, especially these girls, a lot of them grow up in an abusive home. So they see their mum and dad abusing each other. There is very, very few people that are very lucky enough to grow up in a loving home with support, guidance and protection. Majority of us grow up in a broken home. We see toxic behaviour. So it's very hard to break that cycle. But I always say this, social media does have a bad name, but social media also exposes abuse. Social media exposes narcissistic behaviour, domestic abuse, sexual violence. A lot of influencers are talking about it, and I think it's very important that we have a bigger crowd on social media, because social media has a massive influence on the younger generation. And the internet has been my teacher for me. When I discovered what abuse is, I did a lot of research, I found out of knowledge, because remember, I was isolated. Schools, unfortunately, don't do enough. And I did approach a couple of schools before. Schools don't do enough, but we can also start from the home. It's very important we start from our home, because as parents, we have a major responsibility for our kids. And I'd rather take that responsibility and teach my kids than think, oh, the teacher should do it, or the faith leader should do it, or the law should do it. I'd rather protect my kids, you know, but it is hard, because a lot of these youngers, they come from a broken home, or these young boys. I've seen boys from the age of 14, 15 now, who are very, very possessive, very controlling. They tell their girlfriend, oh, you can't go to this chicken and chip shop, there's too many boys hanging around. Where did they pick that up from the mum and dad? They pick it up from the parents. You know, so it's, the more awareness we raise, the more we talk about it, then the more education and knowledge is going to be out there, more younger people can learn about it. That's what I think. Thank you.
Wow, that was strong. That was deep. Give a round of applause for Rezna Khatun. Alright, so up next we have two authors here from the book The Art of Joy Anthology. We're going to bring one at a time. So first one up next.